We just completed June monthly service led by Bishop, very joyously and very spiritually. Now just say that my title is Be From Not, but Will Sprout. I'm 81 years old. There's much that I have learned in my life, most of it in the last 55 years. I dedicate to change my life toward God, Oyasama's divine model. It's important for the younger generation to learn of the success, failure, and history from those who precede them. I will discuss a few of the more important lessons I've learned that have enabled me to enjoy peaceful and prosperous life. Probably one of the most important lessons is the realization that life is not fair. Life is hard, and it will never be easy. In Tenrikyo, we have a saying, from nuts, but will sprout. You have to accept this and not blame your circumstance on others. Set goals for yourself, kokoro sadame, and never give up. Try to achieve them. I inherited life which felt like everything was going against me. In 1940, war broke out between US and Japan. Consequently, every Japanese family was forced to go to an internment camp, and I was born at the camp. After the end of the World War II, my father decided to go back to Hiroshima, Japan. My father did not know about the atomic bomb that had destroyed Hiroshima, and my family had no place to go except the street. My father had to see his friend for a place to stay while he struggled to make a living. One of my father's friends offered their cow shed, so we lived there for a while. I was age 12 when my father made the decision to return to America because living didn't get any better. We returned to California by help from my uncle. I started going to the elementary school, but most of the students are very nice to me, but I always bullied by the 2 or 3 students there because I was bullied. I didn't speak English. I wasn't very smart, and every day going to school was no fun. After I finished high school, I decided to join the U.S. Air Force. My drill instructor reinforced what I learned in my early teen years, all things my father taught me when I was younger. Challenge all your hardship. Respect your elder. Clean up after yourself. Make your bed each day and take pride in yourself. I learned skill I never knew I had. I learned how to get along with others, no matter their race or religion. One of the more important lessons I learned in the boot camp that I still adhere to today, occurring on the obstacle course on a hot day. All of the strenuous running while figuring out obstacle was physically, mentally draining. But by training the mind and body, we were able to accomplish and finish the course. It's just a matter of figuring out how to do it. Don't ever underestimate what you can accomplish and never give up. After I completed my military duty, all of this lesson instilled degrees of confidence in me I had never felt before. My second life, I learned after I was out from a service and pursuing a job as an engineering. During school, I almost died by loss of 2/3 of blood. At that time, Tenrikyo minister came to prayer, Osazuke, for me and counsel me that I should dedicate myself to saving others in order for me to save. I thought myself, even though I have faith in Tenrikyo, I didn't have the confidence to become missionary and spread the teachings. However, my wife said, as long as my husband can be saved, we promise to withstand any hardship and go through even a fire, flood, or famine. I was having trouble breathing and half conscious, but when I heard what she just said, I said to my wife, "Are you serious? The path of missionary is not something to do on a whim." I was then taken to the hospital by ambulance. At that time, the doctor said, "You lost 2/3 of blood. Normally, you should be dead by now. It's a miracle. I didn't save you. God in heaven saved you." As I was told by the American doctor that it was a God, in fact, that has saved me, I resolved to dedicate my life to this path. So, I sacrificed my engineering degrees to become Tenrikyo missionary. It gave me emotional and mental strength. I learned to have no space for bearing grudge and reserve my anger, even though it took a while. When we first moved into NC Church in Sacramento, we didn't know anything about anything, and the followers were very strict on us. And they would always complain about what we did and say things like, "You shouldn't talk about more donation from us," or "You shouldn't let this or that person come to this church." They would tell us to do this or that, and they even yell at us at times. Doubt crept up on me as to whether God really exists or not, and my faith began to fade. More and more I avoid coming into contact with people, and I start to get afraid of people in general. But even then, I had someone that saved me. That was my wife. She went back to her parents' home in Iwate Prefecture in northern Japan. And when she told her mother that we are going to become Tenrikyo missionary, her mother did not object, but only asked, "Will you have a house? Will you have enough food to eat?" When my wife replied, "I won't have such thing because we're going to be doing the missionary," her mother started crying. My wife came from a very wealthy family that was in charge of a large Buddhist Tendai sect temple. It must have been heartbreaking enough for her mother to allow her daughter go to distant and foreign land in America. I think it must have been unbearable for her mother to allow us to become Tenrikyo missionary. I was 29, my wife 26, when we entered church together as a couple committed to a life of helping others to be saved. I was worried at night. I couldn't sleep. And my heart was always racing and I couldn't do anything. Even though my wife did not understand anything about American culture or English, or living in a church in America, she always had a smile on her face. Her smile was my salvation. I was so grateful for my wife for never even once mentioning divorce to me, and for standing to my side for all these years. By pursuing the Tenrikyo of faith, I encountered many nuts while every Oyasama anniversary. First, I received an unexpected nut in my life during the 100th anniversary of Oyasama. My brother-in-law committed suicide after going bankrupt running a Japanese restaurant. Since I was a guarantor, I suddenly had a huge debt of $60,000. 110th anniversary, when we were taking care of a young man who was a drug addict and had just been released from prison. One day, in a drug-infused frenzy, he took a bat to my head and my arm, and both my arms, my wife and son immediately called the ambulance, and I was taken to the hospital. When the doctor saw my condition, he said, "You're lucky to be alive, and I'll do what I can, but I can't guarantee anything." My arm still have a cast in my left arm. I had no medical insurance, and this added $50,000 in medical bills on top of my already huge debt from the brother-in-law's restaurant. Luckily, I only needed 10 stitches on my head, and I had dizziness and a headache for about half a year. But since both of my arms were broken and cast, my wife had to not only feed me whole time, but she even had to help me every time I went to the bathroom and so on. She never once complained and cared for me that whole time. Because of my condition, I was unable to perform my church service duties. Neither could I even administer Sazuke prayer. And I gradually lost of my motivation. I was in my worst condition, both mentally and physically, beset by daily worries. The more I was shown not in a life, one after another, my debt piled up more and more. I had no prospect to pay them back. I feel lonely. I feel sad. I feel like I was going through an endless dark tunnel and I could just not see even a sliver of a light. I thought about resigning as a head minister because I couldn't fulfill my duties. When I was in this state of suffering, I happened to see the former Shinbashira in his service robe coming down in the corridor of the Oyasama home. And he shook my hand, saying, "Mr. Hasegawa, I understand everything that you are going through." He saw through the desperate state of my mind, and I hugged the former Shinbashira, and then I cried. Before I knew it, I woke up and I realized that it was all a dream. Then strange things happened that seemed to be change everything completely. A year later, the former Shinbashira visited mission headquarters here, and I unexpectedly got to meet him and explain to him my circumstance. Until that point, he then took a hold on my hand and then said to me, "Oyasama once told us that after 20 or 30 years has passed, they will come. When we will come to be able to understand, do your best until then." I was tears of joy. When I raised my head, I could see something sparkle in the former Shinbashira's eye too. Further, the former Shinbashira announced that the 110th anniversary of Oyasama will be celebrated throughout the year. I thus made big spiritual resolution, kokoro sadame, to return to the Ojiba each month of the year. I was still in a huge amount of debt, so it was a difficult decision, but I managed to keep my spiritual resolution for a year until December of the year. I was filled with the gratitude for being guided by Oyasama, And I kneel down in front of Oya-sama and express my gratitude, saying to Oya-sama, "What should I do going forward? Return to Chiba this time has been great sacrifice for my family. I think it's impossible for me to continue this because the travel expense alone are adding to our debt, and the debt keep piling up." At that moment, someone tapped my shoulder. And when I turned around, it was former Shinbashi's wife, Masaoka-sama, with a smile on her face, and softly she said to me, "Gokuro-sama, I saw your effort of returning to the Ojiba every month. It must be so difficult for you to return to Ojiba every month. Thank you for your effort." It seemed like Oya-sama was talking to me, speaking to me, and through her. And I was so happy that my mind turned blank. In front of Oya-sama and Shinbashi's wife, I was so moved that without thinking, I proclaimed I will continue my monthly pilgrimage to Jiba. Afterward, I was so surprised that I even said those words. But when I get back to my church, reality sunk in. We were already tapped out. I was discussing with my wife how to cover the next month's airfare with such a huge amount of debt. After listening to our conversation, my daughter said, "Don't worry, Dad. I'll help with you in the airfare." My daughter was hired as a United Airlines flight attendant. I was so happy that I jumped for joy at Oya-sama's advanced blessing. Thanks to Mrs. Nakayama's kind words to me on that day, I was allowed to return to Ojiba tenly every month for 12 years, which is 144 consecutive months. It is also thanks to the guidance of God the Parent and Oya-sama, as well as the guidance of former Shinbashira and his wife, that I am here today. This month of 24 will be third Shinbashira Zenye Nakayama's 10th year memorial service. Service will be conducted at the headquarters church. Now that I have returned once again, I'm filled with nostalgia and loneliness, as they have both since passed away for rebirth. Upcoming 120th anniversary of Oya-sama, when the former head minister of my supervisory church, Portland Church, passed away for rebirth in 2002. My wife appointed as an NC Church head minister, and at the same time I was appointed as a head minister of Portland Church, which was almost 600 miles away. After I served head minister of Portland Church for 12 years, in 2014, our Honjima Grand Church head minister younger brother, Reverend Kazunobu Katayama, were appointed to care for the Portland Church. After spring grand service in Ojiba, the year before Oya-sama's 130th anniversary, I returned to NC Church. On the morning of the very next day, fire broke out of the church, and the roof and the sanctuary were becoming engulfed in the flames. My only thought was that I had to save the shrine and the God the Parent and Oya-sama. And in the moment and the frenzy, I ignored the instruction of the firefighter, and I took the shrine and replaced them in my mobile home. It took about an hour and a half and extinguished the fire, and it was completely burned. After that, I could not sleep at night for several days. As the day passed, I regained my composure, and as a result, I gradually came to realize that fire and the church was a mysterious blessing from God the Parent. Also, if the fire had happened in the middle of the night, my wife and I would have probably perished. The church was newly reconstructed, and the sanctuary altar is now made of fine cypress wood. This happened just about when I had stepped down as a foreign head minister and I was retirement mode. Hardship in our lives are never for the purpose for us to suffer, but they are the seed that made me spiritually strong. And they gave me the reward, brand new church before the anniversary of Oyasama, and the word, the seed for good things in the future. Lastly, as you may know, during this period leading up to Oyasama 140th anniversary and the announcement of Instruction 4, I have received an illness from a God the Parent, and 2 years ago, during my routine colonoscopy checkup, they found stage 3, 12 cancerous tumors. Since then, I had surgery, chemotherapy treatment, CT scan, and so on. Up until now, I have been suffering from a distrustful path. Worries, depression, anger, anxiety, complaint, irritability. For the past 50 years, I have accumulated lots of dust of mind. Therefore, going forward, I will lean on God the Parent, joyously engage in hinokshin each and every day, and do God's work at our church. Thankfully, I have no pain, no tiredness, and I can eat delicious food every day. Inofudesaki. There's nothing at all which should be called illness. It is only because there are paths of mistaken mind. I repeat, there's nothing at all which should be called illness. It is only because there are paths of mistaken mind. Therefore, my illness comes from mind that I used in the past, so that I always try to say, I'm grateful, I'm fine. No matter what happened, I was not surprised to learn that when I had my second colonoscopy last year, the doctor said to me, by surprisingly, I'm cancer-free. Oh, yeah. Not in a life, are a great opportunity for great bud to sprout for our lives. I pray that all of us will not give up, that we will not be swayed by the trend of society or common wisdom of the world. Let us believe in this path, strive in whatever need to get closer to Oyasama mind. Clear our mind and become a generous mind that help others be saved and follow the divine model. I believe that the true joy of our faith can be gained when we face each knot in life head on and depend on our own effort and conviction. In summary, life is not fair. It's hard. Accept that and don't be envious of what others have. The teaching focuses on the values like kindness, humility, honesty, integrity, resilience, the value that makes this planet a wonderful place to live. These are but a few of the lessons that have served me well over the 81 years, as I rose from poverty to rich life by overcoming difficult childhood to challenge the hardship of the following Oyasama divine model, which ultimately achieved my dream here in America, ministry of a Tenrikyo church. If you do this, you can also succeed and find a level of peace and prosperity in your life few people will ever realize. Aligning our values with the Tenrikyo teaching and the building on the path, we can work together to build a better future together for upcoming 90th anniversary of Tenrikyo Mission Headquarters in 2 weeks by receiving Honorable Shinbasha's wife, Harue Okusama, and successor 新柱大輔様。Thank you very much.